Okay, Adon, thank you for the very warm and welcome. So what I want to talk to you tonight about is the concept of choice, and kind of run through my journey, I guess, and share with you a few pieces from that around choice. And I guess for me, choice started, or an understanding of choices and making them from a personal point of view in the late 90s. And I wasn't in a great place, and I made some changes, made some decisions, and those changes led to a series of events, and those events led to me, which Aidan's already alerted to, meeting my now wife, and leaving Australia and coming to Ireland, and 5 kids. Excuse me. So those choices have been interesting in terms of where they led. Then from a professional point of view, I went back to study in 2004, and I came across during that period the concept of authentic leadership and how the choices as a leader we make in terms of where we put ourselves and what we do when we're there impact our ability to lead, if at all. So that was an interesting time as well. So then from that point of view, I looked at my professional things I was doing and what I was good at and what I thought I'd wanted to do. And I went about a program then of chasing particular roles in companies, and I had some success there. So I would look at a particular company role and I'd go after that, and I would get the role and I'd thrive. I'd thrive for about a year or so. And then I started to get despondent. It wasn't that I wasn't performing in the roles. In fact, I've even got promoted during one of the despondent periods. But I just wasn't enjoying it. You know, it wasn't, and when you're not enjoying it, it makes it harder. And when it's harder, you tend to work longer hours. Find that, you know, it then runs off into your personal life. So you're not as interested, or don't have the energy to do anything as much as you would. That then comes back into the professional as well, in that you start to be a little bit disconnected. Well, I found myself a little bit disconnected at work as well. So I was not as socially connected at work, which closed doors, although it wasn't the time I didn't know that I was doing that. So something wasn't right there, okay? So I'd learned about choice from a personal point of view, and I learned about choice from a professional point of view. And I got the idea that, you know, you look at the context, you know, and certainly in learning in 2004, you learn about strategy and all kinds of things, and how you look at all the environment and everything that's there, and you get down to option A or B, and then you base it and make a judgment call and you pick one. But something wasn't right. Something was missing. So forward now to 2013, late 2013, so 20 years now I've been in industry, in the IT sector, in various roles, various size businesses, working various different sectors, consulting, internal jobs as well, leading teams, building teams, all kinds of things. So I'm now looking at 20 years down, and I'm back actually on another of my cycles, having repeated the process of being despondent, searched for the new thing, and then got into that for a year and then been in the same place. And through a chance meeting, everything changed. And it was through that meeting that I started to look at what I was good at, what I really enjoyed. You know, that led me into executive coaching. It led me to making some big changes to where I was at. And there was 2 things that came through that, which it's only recently, it's not that long, 2013, but certainly more recently, that I've come to find the language to describe those 2 things. And what I'm calling those now are the 2 laws of choice. Okay? So back to what I found out about my career and what I've been doing, this cycle of perform, thrive, then not perform. I'd found I was looking at things from getting down to 2 options, A or B. It has to be one or the other. But I was missing a third path. And the third path was not choosing any of them. The no option, the not doing any of them. And that was empowering. And that became law number 1, that you have ultimate choice. Even if there's only one option, you can still say no. Now that was empowering. Getting to the point where at work I could say no to a request from a colleague. Or I could say, in my personal life, I could say no to a demand for my time. But that wasn't the full picture either. There was still something wrong. I had ultimate choice, I could choose. But then I found myself coming up against one option. Only one option. I was saying, this can't be right. Why am I finding myself in this place? So I can say no. So I've got this job. I can say no to this job. Could I? I've got a mortgage, got bills to pay. I've got things I think I need. So can I say no? And it wasn't until I came across this question that things changed again and I got the second law. And that was, what is blocking me from seeing the other options? So that led me into basically the second law, which is around beliefs. And I'm going to get onto the second law in a minute, but I want to divert just for a moment and talk about beliefs and how that works. So beliefs in a nutshell. Okay, so let's even do this without having a lovely PowerPoint presentation. So if we start with ourselves, our core. At our core, what I've come to understand is values and traits. Okay, so we use the values and traits to build our beliefs and adopt beliefs. We use the beliefs then to drive our behaviours and also evaluate our experiences. Okay, so values. What are values? So values are things like, wisdom, freedom, openness, connection. Okay, growth, affiliation, personal aspects that we find important. Okay, and traits then. Traits are things like passive versus assertive. Okay, cautious versus lively. Being spontaneous versus being dutiful. So we have these values and traits. Now the researchers do not agree where these come from. Some look at genetics, inheritance. Some look at foundation years. But the smart people out there do agree that really once you're tracking through your teenage years, it's job done. Your personality is there. Now things might shift around a little bit as you go through different phases of life. For example, security is more important to me now with 5 kids than it would have been in my 20s when I was skydiving. Okay. But they are there, all right? So we have our values and traits. We use them to build beliefs and adopt beliefs. So what are beliefs? Okay. So beliefs, well, there's a spiritual side of beliefs, but they go everywhere else as well. They cover what we eat, high carb, low carb, high protein, that extra bit of cake. Okay. They cover how we socialise. Is it when you meet someone for the first time, is it the handshake? Is it the kiss on one cheek? Is it 2 cheeks or 3? Or is it the bear hug? They cover all kinds of things. Simple things like you should always wear matching socks. Or should you? Or does it matter? Okay. They go into our work. In everything we do in our work, the way we behave around our colleagues, the way we behave with when we do our tasks. In meetings, things like whether we think it's appropriate to do emails while you're in a meeting or be on the phone doing Twitter updates when you're on a conference call. They go into the home, into our personal lives. Smartphones during dinner. Catching up on some work emails while you're there hanging with the kids. They go everywhere. So the values and traits build our beliefs. We use them to adopt beliefs as well. We also use them, the beliefs then, to drive our behaviours and and to evaluate experiences. So we use them to evaluate experiences. What does that mean? So somebody passes you on the street, okay, and ignores you. Now, if that's somebody you don't know, you're going to judge them a certain way. If it's your brother, it might be a slightly different way. So we have beliefs about that. We have beliefs about something somebody said to us at work. What did it mean? We have beliefs about what somebody did, maybe giving us something to do at work or at home. So it drives everything. The curious thing about beliefs, though, is that unlike traits and values, beliefs can be changed in an instant. The trick is to revisit the assumptions and the context in which the belief was made, and you can change it. Look at who would have thought that you should wear the same coloured football boots until you saw them running out in the World Cup, different colours. Or on a more serious note, how many beliefs were shattered the day the planes flew into the Twin Towers? So beliefs, they can be changed, which is important. So we change beliefs, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst. For example, as a young fella, I learnt quite quickly, as my brother threw things at me, that you've got to put your hand up or try and catch it, because it hurts when it hits your chest. I then learnt, a little while later, when a cricket ball hit my fingers, that catching a ball causes pain. So it was better to stand out of the way. Now that belief didn't serve me as well because I didn't really make any teams after that. So this brings me back to choice and back to the second law. And the second law of choice is that base your options. Base the options you look at on your own beliefs, not borrowed ones. So what's a borrowed belief? So borrowed beliefs are basically beliefs we adopt without questioning the assumptions or context in which they're made. And we have lots of them. Lots and lots of them. For example, I had a borrowed belief around having a permanent and pensionable job. That belief was borrowed from my parents' generation. I had and still have beliefs around how I should behave as a husband and a father. And those beliefs are borrowed largely from my grandparents' generation. So we have beliefs, we have borrowed beliefs, some serve us, some don't. And that's, for me, was the learning around the second law. Is that my experience, my career, my relationships, I was all starting to look at now, what are my options if I look at them? If I look at the beliefs around what I'm looking at? Do I really agree with them? Don't I? And it's not that you're going to change your beliefs overnight, but by revisiting them, asking yourself, what is it about this belief that's really important to me? You'll start to see other options. And it's through the other options you have more choice. So the turning point for me really was about giving them back. Saying, right, that's a great belief, thanks very much, but I'm going to give that back. Thanks for the loan, got me this far for a bit, learned some things, and I'll give it back. And that's the journey that I've come through in terms of now, in terms of the two laws then of choice. The first one, you have ultimate choice. Even the options, if there's only one option, you can still say no. And the second one, base your options on your own beliefs, not borrowed ones. So I want to finish now with an anecdote if I can. I believe there's some truth in it, although I'm going to mix it around a little bit on the way I first heard it. See if I can mess with a few more beliefs. So here it is. So I want you to picture this young man, and he's standing in a kitchen. And he's cooking up a storm. He's got all set up. He's doing the family dinner, the family roast. And he's got the leg of lamb in front of him. And he's got all the bits and pieces, and his father leans over his shoulder and says, son, make sure before you put it in the oven, you chop the end off the leg. And this young man turns, what for? And Dad says, well, that's the way you do it. When you're doing the lamb, before you put it in the oven, you always chop the end off. And he said, but how do you know that that's the way you do it? And he said, well, my mother taught me that way. So the young man says, hey, Gran. He says, and Gran comes over, and he says to Gran, what's the story with cooking a lamb roast, And she goes through this whole rigmarole of what she does and so forth, and then she says at the end of that before you put it in the oven, you chop the end off it. And he says, well, Gran, but what do you do that for? How do you know that that's the right way to do it? And Gran says, well, that's the way my mother did it. That's the way my mother did it that way. So the young man takes up his apron, puts it down, walks into the good room. And he says, hey, Nan. Yes, yes, dear, come over, says Nan. And he says, Nan, I'm there cooking dinner, and Dad and Gran say to do the lamb roast, I need to chop the end off before I put it in the oven. And Nan grins and looks over and she says, well, she says, dear, when I was your age, we were very poor. We didn't have much. We only had a small oven. So to fit the lamb into the oven, I had to chop the end off. Thank you. Thank you for that.